A few years ago, a small rescue boat was sailing across the open sea when it came across this kayak. What's strange is that this kayak had something no one ever expected to find. Years earlier, Andrew McAuley, an adventure enthusiast and skilled athlete, had become well known for his daring explorations. He was an expert climber who had explored remote regions across Australia, Patagonia, and New Zealand. Throughout the 1990s, he achieved what many considered impossible, pushing the limits of human endurance and exploration. But years later, Andrew decided to take his passion to a different frontier: the ocean. He began training in kayaking, and over the following years, he challenged some of the toughest routes around Australia. For example, in 2005, he spent 7 days alone crossing the Gulf of Carpentaria. He also paddled solo from mainland Australia to Tasmania, a route of about 140 miles known as the Bass Strait. In fact, he didn't just do it once, but 3 times, because in truth, he was preparing for something far more dangerous. Andrew was actually training for a far greater challenge: to cross the Tasman Sea, a treacherous stretch of ocean that connects Australia and New Zealand. The journey covers roughly 1,250 miles, and it's one of the most dangerous sea routes in the world. 3 other experienced adventurers had already attempted it before him, and each one was forced to give up soon after setting out. Even the Australian authorities strongly advised Andrew not to try it. The road isn't just long, it's unpredictable. The real danger lies in the weather. Massive storms are known to form there, bringing violent winds that churn the sea into chaos, creating sudden and deadly conditions. Andrew knew all of this. He had spent months meticulously planning every detail of the expedition. During his training, he realized that the biggest threat would indeed be the weather. He also estimated that the crossing would take nearly a month to complete. To prepare, he decided to modify his kayak. He built a small yellow carbon fiber cabin. He painted a face on it and gave it a name: Casper. This tiny cabin would allow him to rest and stay protected through the night. To ease the authorities' concerns, Andrew presented his custom kayak for inspection. After several tests, they finally granted him permission to go ahead with the journey. Andrew made his final preparations, packing a satellite phone, an emergency radio, a GPS, and his camera. In December of 2006, he set off on his journey. Almost immediately, he found himself battling the sea, facing storm after storm. But after just 48 hours, he decided to turn back. According to his account, the nighttime temperatures were far lower than he had anticipated, making it nearly impossible to rest. He realized he needed better gear to survive the cold nights. Weeks later, on January 11th, he said goodbye to his wife and his young son, and once again, set sail toward New Zealand. From the very beginning, the weather was brutal. That month was officially recorded as having some of the worst conditions since 1988. Towering waves, nearly 30 feet high, slammed against his kayak over and over again. Meanwhile, the winds shifted constantly, and the storms showed no sign of stopping.
And I was going to start paddling today, but it's getting up a bit too feisty, so I've decided not to. I'm going to tuck back under and go back to sleep for a while.
From Andrew's photos and video recordings, it's clear that at one point, he was forced to remain inside Casper for 28 straight hours. Weeks later, he noted that the design had worked perfectly. It had kept him safe through the worst of the storm. Encouraged by this, Andrew continued documenting his journey, capturing every moment as he pushed farther into the open sea.
But I got to keep it together and really focus and make sure that I pull this off successfully, because I've just got too many things to go back to. I've got a beautiful wife, I had a beautiful son, little Finlay. He's just the most gorgeous kid in the world. Can't wait to see you again, Daddy. Be home soon, okay?
By February 8th, Andrew had accomplished what many thought was impossible. He had successfully crossed 2/3 of the Tasman Sea. The weather had finally calmed, and conditions seemed to be in his favor. He was only a few miles away from reaching his goal. Everything was going so well that he picked up his satellite phone and sent a short message to his wife. It read, "See you Sunday at 9 a.m. Everyone was thrilled. Friends and family in New Zealand were preparing to welcome Andrew as he completed what would have been one of the most extraordinary solo sea crossings ever attempted. A day later, now Friday night, the Coast Guard received a distress call. No one knew what was happening, so they immediately launched a nighttime search. But after hours of scanning the sea, they found nothing. By early Saturday morning, more rescue teams were deployed, and just a few hours later, one of the search boats finally made a discovery: Andrew's kayak, drifting alone, in perfect condition. First, they found his satellite phone. Then, his paddles, his GPS, and his emergency radio. All intact and working perfectly. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary. But then, they came across something else. Among his belongings was Andrew's camera. When they played back the footage, they watched, day by day, everything Andrew had endured out there on the open sea. But when they reached the very last photo, they saw this: Andrew's face, frozen in a strange, almost haunting expression. And after that moment, Andrew McAuley was never seen again. To this day, his disappearance remains one of the ocean's greatest mysteries. In Japan, there's a well-known mountain called Daisetsuzan. It's actually not too difficult to reach its peak. All you really have to do is pay attention to the path in front of you. But there's one small detail that many people tend to forget. As soon as you start along the trail, you'll eventually reach a different section, a wide, flat stretch of land. And this is where most people get confused. It's said that to know whether you're still on the right path, you have to look far into the distance and search for a large, square-shaped rock. This rock is known as the safe stone. When you reach it, the path becomes visible again, and you can safely continue your climb toward the summit. But here's what most don't realize. In that same flat terrain, there's another rock in the distance, almost identical to the first one. This one is called the false safe stone. If you accidentally follow the trail leading to this false stone, you'll end up deep inside a dense bamboo forest where people often lose their way and sometimes never find their way back. In July of 1989, 2 men were hiking toward the summit of Daisetsuzan. After several minutes of climbing, they reached the flat stretch of land. Looking around, they spotted the square-shaped stone, and naturally, they assumed it marked the right path. But what they didn't realize was that they had chosen the path of the false safe stone. After walking for a while, they found themselves surrounded by a thick bamboo forest. Believing they were still on the right track, they kept going, deeper and deeper into the woods, until they eventually became lost. Hours passed, and that night, their families reported them missing. Authorities began searching the mountain, but visibility was nearly impossible. The bamboo forest was far too dense, making it difficult to see or move through. After several days with no progress, the search was close to being called off. But on July 24th, a rescue team decided to send out one more helicopter. After hours of circling above the mountain, the crew finally spotted something unusual: a small clearing among the trees. And right in the middle of it, they saw a message carved into the ground. It read, SOS. The pilot quickly returned to base and alerted the other rescue teams about the location. Hours later, search crews began moving toward the area, closing in from just a few miles away. But before they could reach the clearing, 2 men suddenly emerged from the edge of the forest. Fortunately, they were the missing hikers. Both were in terrible condition, exhausted, dehydrated, and barely able to stand. Rescuers immediately helped them aboard the helicopter. Over the following days, the men slowly recovered. Everyone was relieved. The mission had been a success. The pilot even approached them later to congratulate them for building the rescue sign that had led to their discovery. But when he mentioned the SOS, the 2 men looked confused. They stared at each other for a moment, and then one of them said quietly, "We didn't make any rescue sign." As you can imagine, the rescue team was immediately put on high alert. They launched a new search, but this time they went straight to the exact location where the SOS sign had been found. When they arrived, they began carefully inspecting the area, Near a tree, they noticed a shallow hole in the ground. Peering inside, they discovered a backpack. Inside the bag, they found a driver's license along with several personal belongings. The name on the license was Kenji Iwamura. It turned out that sometime earlier, Kenji had been staying at a small cabin near the mountain. One morning, he told the owner he was going for a hike up to the summit. But when the entire day passed and Kenji never returned, the owner grew concerned and reported him missing. Soon after, a large search began. Teams combed through every part of the mountain, through the forests, the trails, and the bamboo groves. But Kenji Iwamura was never found. No one ever learned what truly happened to him. Until 5 years later, when those two hikers were rescued. Because along with the driver's license, the rescuers found one more thing inside Kenji's backpack: a voice recorder. When they pressed the play button, this is what they heard. On the tape, Kenji's voice can be heard saying, "I'm trapped. I can't move. SOS. Please, help me. I'm at the spot where I first saw the helicopter, but the bamboo is too thick. I can't move. Please get me out of here." At that moment, investigators realized that the SOS signal had actually been made by Kenji himself, but there was something deeply unsettling. Even though they knew the exact location of the sign, there was no trace of where Kenji could have been trapped. So, for the next several hours, they kept searching the area, until finally, they discovered something that would close the case. But before we get to what they found, let's take a look at what the online stories say about the day Kenji Iwamura disappeared. According to what's believed, Kenji had been hiking toward the summit when he, too, came across the false safe stone. Unaware of the danger, he followed the wrong path, the one leading straight into the bamboo forest. Hours went by as Kenji struggled to find his way back to the open clearing where the two stones were, but by then, it was already too late. He was lost. Desperate, he tried to push his way through the thick bamboo, heading downhill in hopes of reaching the base of the mountain. After some time, he found a small drop in the terrain and decided to slide down. But when he landed and took a few steps forward, he realized something terrifying. He was standing on the edge of a steep cliff. Looking down, he saw the vast drop beneath him. It was far too high to jump. Doing so would have been fatal. When he turned around to climb back up, he saw that the slope was just as steep. There was no way to climb out. He was trapped. Time passed, and panic began to set in. Then in the distance, Kenji heard something. The faint sound of a helicopter. It grew louder and louder, until it passed directly above him. Kenji must have thought they'd seen him. That rescue was finally coming, but the pilot never spotted anything below. And eventually, the helicopter flew away. The moment Kenji realized they were leaving, that no one had seen him, must have been devastating. Fear turned into despair, and despair into hopelessness. It's believed that over the next few days, Kenji remained trapped there. He had no food, no water, no shelter from the cold, and no way to call for help. His only remaining option was to take out his voice recorder and record the desperate message you heard earlier. After that, it's thought that Kenji gathered what little strength he had left and tried to climb down the cliff, hoping to find a way out. Eventually, he reached a lower open area, a clearing without bamboo, and used fallen branches and trees to build an SOS sign, hoping someone would see it from above. But Kenji Iwamura never made it out of there alive. We now return to the day when investigators searched the area. Just a few meters from the tree where the backpack was found, they made another discovery: human bones. After running several tests, it was confirmed they belonged to Kenji. But there's something else. The case became so widely known in Japan that many people began examining the official reports, and soon discovered disturbing inconsistencies that made the story even darker and more mysterious. According to the authorities, the SOS signal was built using 19 logs, each about 5 meters long. That means they were extremely heavy and difficult to move. Even more puzzling, the signal was located dozens of meters away from the forest. which means someone had to cut down the trees, shape the logs, and drag them one by one all the way to the clearing. In other words, it would have been physically impossible for someone in Kenji's condition. He had been wandering for days, without food, without water, and was already completely exhausted. But it gets even stranger. The forensic report stated that, given his physical state, Kenji couldn't have possibly built the SOS signal. And here's the most unsettling part. No axe or cutting tool was ever found anywhere near the site. Another disturbing inconsistency came from the police themselves. At first, they claimed the bones belonged to a woman, but just a few days later, they changed their story, saying they were Kenji's remains. Then, when the authorities played the audio recording for Kenji's parents, they both insisted that the voice on the tape wasn't their son's. Because of this, many now believe that Kenji's real remains are still lost somewhere in that forest. And to this day, no one truly knows who recorded that desperate message, or who built the eerie SOS signal.